The morning of June 15th, 2147, began like any other summer day. Birds sang in the trees. Children played in parks. People went to work, complained about traffic, and made plans for the weekend. Humanity had spread across the solar system by then. There were cities on Mars, research stations on Europa, and mining colonies on Titan. But Earth was still home. Earth was still the heart of everything. General Daniel Cole sat in his office at the United Earth Defense Command in Geneva. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years in the military, and he thought he had seen everything. He was looking at a picture on his desk. It showed his wife Maria and their 2 children, Sophie and Jake. They lived in Chicago. He had talked to Maria that morning. She told him Sophie had lost another tooth. Jake wanted a dog for his birthday. Normal things. Beautiful things. At 9:47 a.m. Geneva time, the sky changed. The first reports came from satellites. Strange energy readings in high orbit. Then came the visuals. Ships. Hundreds of ships. They were massive, dark, and shaped like nothing human engineers had ever designed. They appeared out of nowhere, emerging from tiers in space itself. Cole stood up from his desk. Alarms screamed through the building. Officers ran through hallways. Screens flickered with emergency broadcasts. He watched as the alien ships took positions above major cities around the world: New York, Tokyo, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, London, Beijing, and Chicago. The bombardment began at 10:03 a.m. Beams of light, brighter than the sun, fell from the sky. Each beam hit the ground and spread outward in a wave of fire. Buildings melted. Streets turned to glass. People did not even have time to scream. In 90 minutes, 12 cities were gone. Just gone. Where millions of people had lived and loved and dreamed, there was only ash and silence. Cole tried to call Maria. The line was dead. He tried again and again. He knew, somewhere deep inside, that she was gone. Sophie was gone. Jake was gone. Everything he loved had been erased in a flash of alien light. He did not cry. He did not fall to his knees. He stood at the window and watched the smoke rise over the distant horizon. Something inside him changed in that moment. Something broke, and something harder took its place. The aliens broadcast their message an hour after the attack ended. Every screen on Earth showed the same image: a tall creature with pale blue skin, 4 eyes, and a face that seemed incapable of emotion. He called himself High Commander Zorath of the Velthari Empire. "People of Earth," Zorath said in perfect English, "your world now belongs to the Empire. You have 30 days to surrender completely. Your leaders will present themselves for processing. Your population will be organized for labor assignments. Resistance is not possible. Your technology is primitive. Your military is insignificant. You are alone in a galaxy that belongs to us. Accept this truth, and some of you may live. Reject it, and you will all die." The broadcast ended. Silence filled the command center. Around Cole, officers were crying, shouting, praying. Some sat frozen in shock. The casualty estimates started coming in. 2 billion dead. 2 billion human beings, killed in less than 2 hours. It was not a war. It was an execution. The president of the United Earth Council called an emergency meeting. World leaders gathered through secure channels, their faces pale and frightened. They talked about options. Some wanted to surrender. What choice did they have? The aliens had technology beyond anything humanity could match. Fighting back would only mean more death. Cole listened to them argue. He said nothing for a long time. When he finally spoke, the room went quiet. "They hit us because they think we are weak," he said. "They killed 2 billion people because they believe we will break. They expect us to kneel, to beg, to accept slavery." He paused and looked at each face on the screen. "I watched Chicago burn this morning. My wife was there. My children were there. I will not kneel. I will not beg. and I will not stop until every single one of those ships is destroyed. Some called him crazy, some called him brave. But no one could argue with the fire in his eyes. Over the next few days, the Velthari landed troops on every continent. They rounded up survivors, sorted them like cattle, and sent them to processing centers. Humans who resisted were killed on the spot. The lucky ones escaped to underground bunkers, mountain hideouts, or the outer colonies beyond Earth. Cole organized the evacuation of key military personnel and scientists. He sent them to Mars, to the asteroid belt, to anywhere the Velthari had not yet reached. He gathered every piece of data they had on the alien ships. He studied their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses. There had to be weaknesses. Nothing was invincible. On the last night before he left Earth, Cole visited the ruins of Chicago. He walked through streets that were now nothing but melted stone and gray dust. He found the neighborhood where his family had lived. There was nothing left. Not a wall, not a photograph, not a toy. Just emptiness. He knelt in the ash and made a promise. "I will make them pay," he whispered. "I will build something they never expected. I will find others who want to fight. And I will bring fire to their worlds, just as they brought fire to ours. This is not the end of humanity. This is the beginning of something they will never forget." He stood up, looked at the stars, where alien warships still circled, and turned away. There was work to do. The Velthari believed they had won. They reported to their emperor that Earth was secured, its population broken, its spirit crushed. High Commander Zorath received medals and praise. The conquest of humanity was complete. They did not know about the ships being built in secret. They did not know about the scientists working day and night on new weapons. They did not know about the general with nothing left to lose, making plans in the darkness of space. The Velthari had made a mistake. They had attacked Earth first. They had created an enemy with nothing left but rage and purpose. And that enemy was not going to surrender. He was going to fight back. 6 months had passed since the sky burned. Earth was no longer free. Velthari soldiers walked through empty cities. Their machines dug into mountains and drained oceans. They took everything of value and cared nothing for what they destroyed. Humans who remained on the surface lived as slaves, working in mines and factories, building things for their conquerors. But not all humans had given up. Deep inside the asteroid Ceres, hidden in the cold darkness of the belt between Mars and Jupiter, a new kind of hope was being built. General Daniel Cole had turned an old mining facility into the headquarters of the United Human Resistance. Thousands of survivors lived there now, soldiers and scientists and ordinary people who refused to accept defeat. Cole walked through the underground corridors every day, checking on progress, talking to his people, reminding them why they fought. He never smiled anymore. The man who had once laughed with his children was gone. In his place was something harder, sharper, focused on a single purpose. Dr. Katie Brennan found him in the command center one evening. She was a small woman with messy brown hair and glasses that she was always pushing up her nose. Before the invasion, she had been a quantum physicist at MIT. Now she was the head of the Resistance's science division, and she had news. "General," she said, holding up a datapad. "We did it. We cracked the Velthari drive system." Cole looked at her. "Explain." 3 months ago, our salvage teams recovered pieces of a Velthari scout ship that crashed on Titan. The crew was dead, but the engine core was mostly intact. My team has been studying it ever since. She pulled up a holographic display. Complex equations and diagrams filled the air. Their ships travel faster than light by folding space. We did not think it was possible, but now we understand how it works, and we can build our own. For the first time in months, something like hope flickered in Cole's eyes. "How long until we have a working prototype?" 6 months, maybe less if we push hard." Cole nodded slowly. The Velthari thought humanity was trapped in this solar system, unable to reach them, unable to threaten their vast empire. They were wrong. Soon, humans would be able to go anywhere in the galaxy, and they would bring war with them. While the scientists worked on the new drive, Cole focused on building an army. Volunteers arrived every week from Mars, from the outer moons, from hidden settlements on asteroids. Some were soldiers. Most were not. He trained them all. He taught them to fight, to think, to survive against an enemy with better weapons and greater numbers. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Torres became one of his most trusted officers. Torres was young, only 28, with dark hair and quick eyes. He had been a pilot before the invasion, flying cargo ships between Earth and Mars. Now he led the Resistance's special operations teams. "I have a mission for you," Cole told him one day. "We need intelligence. Real intelligence. Not just what we can see from space. I want you to go back to Earth." Torres did not hesitate. "When do I leave?" "Tomorrow. Take a small team. Get in quiet. Gather information. And get out. I need to know how the Velthari organize their forces, where they store their supplies, and most importantly, if there are still people down there willing to fight." Torres picked his team carefully. Sergeant Amy Vance was a combat veteran who had survived the destruction of New York. She was tough, quiet, and absolutely deadly with a rifle. Corporal Derek Lynn was a technical specialist, a genius with computers who could hack into almost any system. Together with 3 other soldiers, they boarded a small stealth ship and headed for Earth. The journey took 2 weeks. They approached the planet from the dark side, hiding in the shadow of the moon until the moment was right. Then they dropped through the atmosphere in a tiny capsule, landing in the mountains of what used to be Colorado. Earth looked different from above. The great cities were gone, replaced by gray scars. The oceans had changed color. The air smelled wrong, filled with chemicals from Velthari machines. But life survived. In the mountains and forests, in hidden caves and abandoned tunnels, humans still lived. Torres and his team made contact with a resistance cell led by a woman named Grace Park. She was a former schoolteacher who had lost her entire family in the attack. Now she led 300 survivors in a constant battle to stay alive and stay hidden. "We fight when we can," Grace told Torres. "Small attacks, sabotage, anything to slow them down. But we are losing. Every month, they find more of us. Every month, our numbers get smaller. We need help." Torres nodded. "Help is coming. I promise you that." Over the next month, his team gathered enormous amounts of information. They mapped Velthari patrol routes, identified supply depots, and discovered something unexpected. The Velthari had built a massive prison complex in what used to be Kansas. Thousands of humans were held there, waiting to be shipped off-world as slave labor. But even more interesting was what Derek Lynn found when he hacked into Velthari communication systems. The aliens were not alone. Their empire stretched across hundreds of star systems, and they had conquered dozens of other species before coming to Earth. Many of those species still existed, living as slaves, just like the humans. Torres sent his report back to Ceres through a coded burst transmission. When Cole read it, he saw something beyond revenge. He saw the possibility of allies. "They made an empire by crushing others," he said to Katie Brennan. "What if we freed those others? What if we gave them weapons and hope? The Velthari would not just be fighting humans. They would be fighting everyone they ever hurt." Brennan smiled for the first time since he had known her. "You want to start a galactic revolution?" "I want to win," Cole replied, "and I will use every tool I can find to do it." Back on the Velthari homeworld, High Commander Zorath delivered his regular report to the Emperor. Earth was secure. Human resistance was insignificant. The conquest was proceeding exactly as planned. The Emperor was pleased. He awarded Zorath additional territories to govern. The humans, he declared, would be excellent workers. They were strong, adaptable, and just intelligent enough to be useful. Neither of them knew about the fleet being built in the asteroid belt. Neither of them knew about the faster-than-light drives being tested in secret labs. Neither of them knew about the network of spies now operating on Earth, mapping every weakness in their defenses. The storm was gathering. And soon, it would break. 2 years after the invasion, humanity was ready to strike back. The Defiant hung in the darkness of space, far from any Velthari patrol routes. She was the first human warship designed to travel between stars. Smaller than a Velthari cruiser but faster and more dangerous, she carried weapons that had been built specifically to hurt the enemy. Her crew of 200 men and women had trained for this moment their entire lives. Captain Nathan Brooks stood on the bridge, looking at the stars through the main viewport. He was 40 years old, a former Mars colony pilot who had lost everything when the Velthari came. His wife had died in the initial attack. His brother had been taken to a slave camp and never seen again. Like everyone else in the Resistance, he had nothing left but the fight. "Jump drive is ready, Captain," reported his navigator. Brooks took a deep breath. This was it. The first time a human ship would travel faster than light. The first step in a war that would span the galaxy. "Engage," he said. The universe stretched and twisted, colors blurred. Reality itself seemed to bend. And then, suddenly, they were somewhere else. Light years away from home, in a star system the Velthari called Kethros. The planet below them was gray and barren. Velthari mining operations covered its surface, ripping metals and minerals from the ground. And in orbit, a space station held 3,000 slaves. They were not human. They were Torani, an insectoid species the Velthari had conquered centuries ago. Most people in the galaxy believed the Torani were broken, defeated, no longer capable of resistance. General Cole believed differently. "All hands to battle stations," Brooks announced over the ship's speakers. "This is what we trained for. Let's show them what humanity can do." The Velthari garrison at Kethros was small. They did not expect trouble. This was a backwater system, far from any threat. The first warning they got was when the Defiant dropped out of hyperspace and opened fire. Human weapons were different from anything the Velthari had seen. Katie Brennan and her team had designed them to exploit specific weaknesses in Velthari ship armor. Plasma rounds burned through their hulls. Electromagnetic pulses disabled their systems. In 3 minutes, the 2 patrol ships guarding the station were destroyed. Major Samantha Price led the boarding party. She was 35 years old, with short blonde hair and scars on her arms from a dozen battles. Her Marines stormed into the station through breaching pods, fighting their way through corridors filled with confused Velthari soldiers. The aliens were bigger and stronger than humans. Their weapons were powerful, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Humans fought dirty. They used grenades, flashbangs, and close-quarters combat. They did not follow the rules of war that the Velthari expected. They fought like people who had nothing to lose. Within an hour, the station was secured. The Velthari commander was dead, and 3,000 Torani slaves were free for the first time in generations. Price entered the main holding area, where the Torani waited in shock. They were tall creatures, with 4 arms and large compound eyes. Their bodies were covered in a hard shell that shimmered with faint colors. They looked at the human Marines with something like wonder. One of them stepped forward. She was older than the others. Her shell faded with age. "You are not Velthari," she said in broken common speech. "What are you?" "We are human," Price replied. "We came from Earth. The Velthari attacked our world too. Now we fight back. And we want you to fight with us." The old Torani was silent for a long moment. Then she made a sound that might have been laughter. "We thought the Velthari were gods. We thought no one could stand against them. But you are just small creatures with soft skin, and you have destroyed their warriors." She turned to her people and spoke in their clicking language. When she faced Price again, her eyes were bright. "We will fight. Show us how." News of Kethros spread through the underground networks of the Velthari Empire. In slave camps and labor colonies, on conquered worlds and broken moons, people whispered about the humans. A new species had risen against the masters. They had won a battle. They were freeing prisoners. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy had hope. High Commander Zorath received the report 3 days later. He read it twice, certain there had been a mistake. Humans had traveled to another star system? Humans had destroyed Velthari warships? It was impossible. Their technology was primitive. They were nothing but animals. He dispatched a battle fleet of 20 ships to investigate and crush this rebellion. The fleet arrived at Kethros to find the station empty and the human ship gone. They searched for weeks but found nothing. The Defiant had already moved on. Captain Brooks and his crew hit another target. Then another. Mining stations. Supply depots. Isolated outposts. They struck fast and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Every attack freed more prisoners. Torani. Selvari. Beings made of living crystal. Draxoni. Fierce reptilian warriors who had been slaves for 50 years. Each freed species added strength to the growing resistance. The Torani were brilliant engineers. The Selvari could communicate across vast distances using natural quantum entanglement. The Draxoni were fearless fighters who had been waiting for this moment since their world fell. General Cole watched the reports come in from Ceres. His small resistance had become something much larger. This was not just about humanity anymore. This was about everyone the Velthari had ever crushed. "We need more ships," he told his council. "More weapons. More soldiers. The Velthari will respond to this. They will come at us with everything they have." "Then let them come," said a Draxoni general named Kassan. She was twice the height of any human, with scales the color of dark bronze and teeth like knives. "We have waited generations for this fight. We are ready." Cole looked around the room at the gathered leaders. Humans, Torani, Selvari, Draxoni. Different species, different languages, different histories. United by a common enemy and a common goal. "The Empire has ruled through fear," Cole said. "They believed that fear would keep everyone in line forever. They were wrong. We are going to show them what happens when the galaxy stops being afraid." The war for liberation had begun, and humanity was leading the charge. 5 years had passed since the Velthari first attacked Earth. 5 years of blood, fire, and impossible victories. The war had spread across the galaxy like wildfire, burning through the heart of an empire that had stood for 1,000 years. General Daniel Cole stood on the bridge of the Victory, the flagship of the Allied fleet. He was older now, his hair completely gray, his face lined with exhaustion and grief. But his eyes were the same, hard, determined, burning with a purpose that nothing could extinguish. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of hundreds of ships. Human vessels flew alongside Torani cruisers, Selvari carriers, and Draxoni warships. What had begun as a desperate resistance was now a full military alliance. They called themselves the Coalition of Free Peoples, and they were winning. The last 5 years had been brutal. The Velthari did not surrender easily. They threw fleet after fleet at the Coalition, trying to crush the rebellion before it spread further. Millions died on both sides. Entire worlds were burned. But with every battle, the Coalition grew stronger. Commander Ryan Torres had become one of the war's greatest heroes. His special operations teams had freed over 50 slave worlds. He had personally led the assault on the Velthari Military Academy, destroying an entire generation of enemy officers before they could graduate. The Velthari called him the Shadow. They feared him more than any other human. Captain Nathan Brooks and the Defiant had become legends. The ship had been rebuilt 3 times after near-fatal damage. But she kept flying, kept fighting, kept winning. Her crew had killed more Velthari than any other unit in the fleet. Dr. Katie Brennan had transformed Coalition technology. Her team had developed weapons that made Velthari shields useless, engines that could outrun anything the enemy built, and communication systems that the aliens could not intercept. Without her, the war would have been lost a dozen times over. But the turning point came at the Battle of Vor Station. Vor Station was the Velthari Empire's largest military base outside their home system. 50 warships guarded it at all times. Intelligence suggested that High Commander Zorath himself was stationed there, directing the war against the Coalition. Cole decided it was time to send a message. The attack began at dawn, local time. 200 Coalition ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The Velthari fleet scrambled to respond, but the coalition had learned their patterns, studied their tactics, and designed this assault specifically to break them. Captain Brooks led the first wave, drawing enemy fire while Major Samantha Price's assault ships slipped behind the defensive line. Commander Torres commanded a strike force that targeted the station's power generators. Within an hour, Vor Station was dark, its shields failing, its defenders in chaos. High Commander Zorath watched from the command center as his forces collapsed. He had spent 5 years telling the Emperor that the human problem would be resolved soon. He had promised victory after victory and delivered only excuses. Now, the enemy was at his door. He ordered a retreat. Half his ships escaped into hyperspace. The other half were destroyed or captured. The coalition did not celebrate. Cole had something else in mind. 3 days after the battle, every communication system in the Velthari Empire received the same transmission. It cut through their encryption like it did not exist. Every screen, every speaker, every device showed the same image. General Daniel Cole, standing on the bridge of the Victory, with the burning wreckage of Vor Station visible through the viewport behind him. People of the Velthari Empire, Cole began. His voice was calm, cold, and utterly without mercy. 5 years ago, you came to our world. You killed 2 billion of our people. You burned our cities, enslaved our survivors, and told us that resistance was impossible. He paused and let the silence stretch. You were wrong. Cole stepped forward, and the camera followed him. We are not the primitive species you believed us to be. We learn. We adapt. We fight. And we do not forgive. Behind him, the displays showed images of coalition victories. Velthari ships exploding, slave camps being liberated, soldiers running from human marines. The evidence of 5 years of war, displayed for every citizen of the Empire to see. You hit Earth first, Cole continued. You thought we would break. You thought we would kneel. You thought we would accept slavery like all the others. His eyes narrowed. Now we are coming for you, and we will not stop until your empire is ashes. Your fleets are destroyed, and every species you have ever enslaved is free. He leaned closer to the camera. Tell your emperor this. He can surrender now, and save what remains of his people. Or he can watch everything he built burn. The choice is his. But understand this. We are coming, either way, and we do not show mercy to those who showed none to us. The transmission ended. In the Imperial Palace, the Emperor watched in stunned silence. Around him, advisors argued and panicked. Some demanded immediate surrender. Others insisted on fighting to the last ship. High Commander Zorath tried to explain that the humans could be defeated if they just had more time. More resources. More soldiers. The Emperor silenced them all with a raised hand. Recall every fleet, he ordered. Every ship in the Empire returns to the homeworld. We make our stand at Velthari Prime. If these humans want war, we will give them a war they will never forget. The order went out. From every corner of 1,000 star systems, Velthari warships turned and headed home. The largest fleet in galactic history was assembling for a final battle. General Cole received intelligence reports within hours. He gathered his commanders in the Victory's war room. Torres, Brooks, Price, Brennan, and the leaders of every allied species. This is it, he told them. They are gathering everything they have at their homeworld. One battle. Winner takes all. Kassan, the Draxoni general, bared her teeth in what might have been a smile. Good. I am tired of chasing them. Let them stand and face us. Cole looked around the room at the faces of people who had become his family. They had fought together, bled together, and buried too many friends together. Now they would finish this together. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. We move in 72 hours. The next time we stop, it will be in orbit above Velthari Prime. The final battle was coming. The Battle of Velthari Prime was the largest military engagement in the history of the galaxy. Nearly 1,000 Velthari warships formed a defensive sphere around their homeworld. They had recalled every vessel from every corner of the Empire. Orbital defense platforms bristled with weapons. Ground-based cannons pointed at the stars. The entire planet had become a fortress. Against them came 300 coalition ships, humans, Taurani, Selvari, Draxoni, and a dozen other species who had risen against their former masters. They were outnumbered more than 3 to 1. By every calculation the Velthari made, they should have been easy to destroy. General Daniel Cole stood on the bridge of the Victory, watching the enemy formation on the tactical display. Around him, his officers worked in focused silence. They all knew what was at stake. This battle would decide everything. "All ships report ready, General," Commander Ryan Torres said from his station. Cole nodded. He thought about Maria, about Sophie and Jake. He thought about the billions who had died on Earth and on 100 other worlds. He thought about the promise he had made in the ashes of Chicago, so many years ago. "Signal the fleet," he said. "Attack." The coalition ships surged forward. The Velthari fired everything they had. Space itself seemed to burn with weapons fire. Ships exploded on both sides. The coalition's first wave was torn apart, but they kept coming. Captain Nathan Brooks led the Defiant through a gap in the defensive line, followed by a dozen other fast attack ships. They struck at the orbital platforms, destroying 3 before the Velthari could react. The battle became chaos. Ships twisted and turned, hunting each other through a storm of fire and death. Coalition cruisers rammed Velthari carriers. Fighters swarmed like angry insects. Explosions lit up the darkness in silent flashes of light. Major Samantha Price commanded the ground assault. Her Marines dropped from orbit in armored pods, crashing through the atmosphere toward strategic targets on the surface. Their mission was to destroy the planetary defense guns, so the fleet could get closer to the Velthari command station. Price landed in the middle of a firefight. Velthari soldiers were everywhere, fighting with desperate fury. But her Marines had been training for this moment for years. They pushed forward, street by street, building by building, never stopping, never retreating. "We are taking heavy casualties," one of her sergeants reported. "Then we take more ground," Price replied. "Keep moving." In orbit, the tide began to turn. The coalition was losing ships, but they were destroying more Velthari vessels than they lost. Dr. Katie Brennan's weapons worked exactly as designed. Velthari shields failed. Their engines exploded. Their communications were jammed. High Commander Zorath watched from the command station as his fleet crumbled. He had promised the Emperor victory. He had sworn that the humans could be defeated. Now he was watching the greatest military force in history being torn apart by an alliance of former slaves and a species the Empire had tried to exterminate. General Cole pushed the Victory deeper into the battle. The flagship's guns never stopped firing. Enemy ships targeted them again and again. But the Victory's shields held. Cole refused to retreat, refused to hide behind his fleet. He wanted the Velthari to see him. He wanted them to know who was coming for them. "Commander Torres," Cole said, "take your team to the command station. End this." Torres had been waiting for this order. He gathered his strike force, including Sergeant Amy Vance and Corporal Derek Lynn, and boarded a fast assault shuttle. They launched from the Victory and raced toward the massive station that served as the nerve center of the Velthari Empire. The station's defenses tried to stop them. Anti-aircraft fire filled the space around them. 2 shuttles were destroyed, but Torres pushed through, crashing into a docking bay with enough force to knock his team off their feet. They fought their way through the station. Velthari soldiers met them at every corner. Vance moved like a machine, her rifle never missing. Lynn hacked through security doors and disabled defense systems. Torres led from the front, killing anyone who stood in their way. The throne room was at the heart of the station. Massive doors, carved with images of Velthari conquests, stood between Torres and his target. He placed explosives on the hinges. "Breach," he ordered. The doors blew inward. Torres and his team stormed inside. The Emperor sat on a throne of dark metal, surrounded by guards. He was ancient. His blue skin faded to gray. his 4 eyes filled with cold hatred. Beside him stood High Commander Zoreth, holding a weapon but not moving to use it. Torres killed the guards in seconds. Then he stood before the 2 most powerful beings in the Empire. His rifle pointed at the Emperor's head. "It's over," Torres said. "Surrender." Zoreth stepped forward. "You cannot win this. Even if you kill us, the Empire will." "The Empire is finished," Torres interrupted. "Your fleets are destroyed. Your armies are defeated. Every species you enslaved is rising against you. There is nothing left to save." The Emperor said nothing for a long moment. He rose from his throne. "We underestimated you," he said. "We thought you were like the others, weak, easily broken." Torres met his gaze without flinching. The others didn't have anything left to lose. The Emperor nodded slowly. Then he removed the golden band from his head, the symbol of his authority, and placed it on the floor. "I surrender." The war was over. 3 months later, General Daniel Cole stood before representatives of every free species in the galaxy. They had gathered to sign the Charter of the Galactic Alliance, a new government dedicated to peace, cooperation, and mutual defense. Never again would one species be allowed to enslave others. Never again would conquest go unanswered. Cole gave a short speech. He talked about sacrifice and loss. He talked about hope and the future. He talked about the billions who had died so that this moment could happen. When he finished, the assembled leaders rose and applauded. Afterward, Cole left the ceremony alone. He traveled to Earth, to the place where Chicago had once stood. A memorial had been built there. A wall of stone bearing the names of everyone who had died in the attack. Billions of names, carved in endless rows. He found Maria's name, Sophie's name, Jake's name. He touched each one with his fingers. "We made it," he whispered. "We fought back. We won." Tears ran down his face, the first he had allowed himself to shed in years. "I hope I made you proud." He stood there for a long time, remembering the people he had loved and lost. Then, he turned and walked away. Behind him, the sun rose over a free Earth. And above, in the endless stars, the ships of the Galactic Alliance kept watch. Humanity was no longer alone. And they were never going to be slaves. Not ever.